Honestly, I committed to Stanford because it was the university that reminded me the most of home. I remember on my official visit, seeing all the gum trees and the eucalyptus trees really made me think of home. So that was one of the big reasons, funny enough, that I committed here. The relationships I have with my teammates, they feel like a second family to me. They're my best friends, and I think we're going to be friends for the rest of our lives. So it made the transition pretty easy. Our relationship there has just grown over the 4 years. In Sydney, Australia, pretty much every kid learns how to swim, especially if you're close to the coast, which is most people. My mom was also a swimmer, so she grew up in mainland China and she was a provincial champion in backstroke, and it turns out I became a backstroker. Maybe it's genetics, maybe it's a few tips along the way, probably a lot of tips along the way, but I remember being 6 years old and just being able to swim backstroke, and it felt natural to me. I was pretty fast compared to the other kids in my grade in that stroke, so I think it's just started from there. My sophomore season was pretty rough and it was plagued by COVID, no pun intended. I think after my freshman year, during the summer, this was when COVID was peaking in the US, and I made a decision along with another teammate to stay in the country because we kind of knew if we went back home, the prospect of coming back for sophomore year fall in time was very unlikely. So we actually lived with Will Tarverstad in Kentucky for 6 months. It was great, spending the pandemic with two of your best friends, but it was also hard. It stopped me from going home for more than a year, so it was hard negotiating that, and then my grandparents passed away during that time and I had to watch both their funerals over Zoom. It was tough. I trained pretty well in the fall, my sophomore year, and then I decided to come back to Sydney over winter break, and turns out I had to quarantine for 2 weeks in a hotel room just by myself, and that kind of hurt my preparation for the winter season after the winter break. And once I got out, all the pools closed because there was another outbreak, so I just had pretty bad training, so I was in bad shape for winter quarter. By the time Pac-12s rolled around, I was swimming very, very slow. I remember feeling sad, angry, and even embarrassed about my performance because I really knew that I could probably swim a lot faster than I did at that point. As soon as I got back off the plane after Pac-12s, I took pretty much no break, maybe 1 or 2 days off, and I just started training as hard as I could every day through the spring. I started working really hard in the gym, and that continued on into the summer between my sophomore and junior year. My freshman year, I had a back injury, so I didn't really have much pressure there. Sophomore year, COVID, didn't have much pressure there. It was the first time I felt like I really, really need to perform at my best at Pac-12s, and I really wanted to make NCAAs that year. By the time I got to the start of the fall, I was going best times in practice, at the end without a racing suit on, and that's when I was kind of realized, damn, I'm really improving, and the results kind of just fell into place my junior year. I think that moment came at our mid-season meet at the Greensboro Aquatic Center. It wasn't until I got out, because I can't really see the board because my vision's so bad, and my teammates were like, oh, you made NCs and stuff, and I remember almost having to hold back tears because all the hard work finally paid off. That was pretty much my ultimate goal, to make NCs. I don't know, it's still crazy to me that I have the team records in a bunch of those events, and I don't know, I'm just grateful for having the coaches that I do and having the teammates that motivated me to get to that point, but it's still crazy. And seeing the guys that are in backstroke crew right now, I don't think those records are gonna last very long, to be honest. Just seeing guys with times from the 90s and the early 2000s, and just thinking that might be me 20 years from now, still there, and the kids are looking at my times and just trying to beat whatever I went. It's crazy. I didn't do it on my own, so a lot of it was, calling my parents. They've been my support system my whole life, and they've sacrificed so much for me, especially in the sport of swimming. honestly, being here at Stanford has, made me appreciate them even more. I find myself calling them much more than I probably would have if I went to, Sydney University or something like that. I think my perspective on swimming has changed a lot, especially this year. A lot of the motivation was intrinsic. I think my motivation has kind of shifted outwards towards my teammates. And, especially in the backstroke crew, I love trying to get guys to beat me. I think it's kind of weird. I get more joy when guys are beating me than when I go really fast in practice now. So I think when I take my 5th year next year, I'm going to be swimming, and I think the one thing I'm going to focus on is to try and lift up my teammates even more, give them the tips that I learned over the years here at Stanford, and try and make them go as fast as I did, or a lot faster, I hope.